The morning in Chicago was grey, with a damp chill in the air that made every step a challenge. Emily, a young woman who never gave up easily, hurried along the cracked sidewalk toward her job at the downtown hotel. Her pressed but threadbare uniform spoke of long hours and careful washing. Her shoes were almost falling apart at the seams, proof of how much she walked each day. In one hand, she clutched a small plastic bag that held a simple breakfast, a buttered roll and a banana, along. With an old pair of gloves, she checked her phone, hopeful she would not be late for another essential shift that helped keep her family afloat. Without warning, a white SUV with shining chrome whipped around the corner, recklessly fast for the city street. Its wheels hit a deep puddle, and water and mud shot out, splattering Emily from her shoulders to her knees. The passenger side window scrolled down smoothly, and Valerie, perfectly styled and laughing loudly, looked straight at Emily. Pulling away, Valerie yelled an insult that hung in the air long after the SUV's engine faded into traffic. For a moment, Emily stood there, drenched and stung. She felt the humiliation like fire on her skin. But she straightened up, took a shaky breath, and refused to let the tears fall. Across the street, inside a modest black sedan, Michael watched the whole thing unfold. People probably did not notice him very often, and he preferred it that way. He was a quiet man, always paying attention, his expression serious as he observed the city's little dramas. When he saw Valerie's cruel laugh and the splatter of mud hit Emily, something tightened in his chest. Michael had come from tough beginnings, worked his way up, and he recognized both sides of life, the highs and the lows. He knew what it was like to be invisible, just trying to get by, and he could not stand to see someone kicked down for no good reason. He reached for his phone and, in a calm but firm voice, asked his assistant to look into the girl who had just been humiliated. He wanted her name, her situation, anything that could explain why someone would treat her like that. Michael never liked letting unfairness slide. While Emily brushed dirt from her uniform and tried to steady herself, Michael's quiet decision set another story in motion. She kept walking, unaware that someone had just decided to step into her world and maybe help change it, setting off a chain of events that only he seemed to sense at that early hour. When Emily finally reached the entrance of the downtown hotel, most of the morning crowd had already filtered inside. She wiped as much mud off her uniform as she could before stepping through the employee entrance, hoping no one would notice how bad she looked. But almost immediately, her supervisor, Mr. Thompson, spotted her. His face always seemed stern, but today he looked even less forgiving than usual. Without even asking what had happened, he scolded her for being late and for looking so disheveled. Emily tried to explain, her voice hesitant as she mentioned the car and the puddle, but Mr. Thompson cut her off. He told her there was no excuse for her appearance, especially when the hotel expected professionalism from every single worker. Her co-workers exchanged quick, sympathetic glances, but not one of them spoke up or tried to offer help. The atmosphere felt cold and tense, as if everyone was too worried about their own jobs to get involved. Feeling invisible and embarrassed, Emily quietly made her way to the tiny staff locker room. She changed into her spare uniform, tied her hair back neatly, and pushed aside her emotions. With strong resolve, she began tidying guest rooms and polishing floors, just like any other morning. Inside, she felt the weight of her responsibilities, especially thinking about her younger sister, Lily, who needed her. Each task was another reminder that she could not afford to let the world see her break. Far above the city streets, in an office wrapped in glass and morning sunlight, Michael sat behind his desk, focused on the neat folder his assistant had just delivered. Inside, he found everything about Emily. There were records showing she worked not just at the hotel downtown, but also in a bakery during the evenings, barely enough hours left for sleep. An address from a tough neighborhood on the south side, where rent was cheaper but life was harder, was listed. There were notes about how, after her mother's death from cancer, Emily had become the sole provider for her younger sister, Lily. What caught Michael the most was a photo stapled to the last page, Emily next to Lily, both smiling in a park, sun in their hair and a look of hope fighting its way through their tiredness. Michael closed the folder and leaned back, feeling memories stir from his own younger days on the edge of the city. For a moment, he was back in those old shoes, remembering what it felt like to scrape by and still keep going. He told himself not to intervene yet. Instead, he wanted to learn more, to see how Emily managed her burdens. Some instinct told him this was different from his usual business decisions. He promised himself that this time he would try to walk a different path, one driven not by profit, but by empathy. On the other side of the city, Valerie woke up in her spacious River North apartment, high above the buzzing streets. Sunlight spilled across her designer furniture and the sparkling fixtures in her bathroom. She scrolled past, missed messages, and ignored the half-dozen calls from her agent. Nothing seemed as important as capturing the perfect photo of her morning coffee for her followers. Valerie lived for the rush that came with every like and comment, believing the world was meant for people who fought to stay on top. She straightened her hair, touched up her makeup, and adjusted her gold necklace, making sure every detail of her reflection matched the image she posted online. To her, life was a game, and anyone struggling just had not played well enough. While Valerie's day started with polished routines, across town, Emily tackled another draining shift at the hotel. Every room she cleaned and every hallway she vacuumed was seen as an invisible effort. No one ever really noticed her hard work. When it was finally time for her short break, Emily found a quiet spot in the staff lounge and unwrapped her sandwich, hands still shaking from the morning's events. She ate in silence, feeling the walls closing in, but knowing she had to find the strength to get through the rest of the day, no matter how overwhelming the world felt. Around noon, while guests filled the hotel lobby for lunch, Michael made his way inside, blending in with the steady flow of travelers and business folks. He had swapped his usual tailored suit for a more casual look, old jeans, a faded jacket, nothing to draw attention. From a quiet corner near the reception, he watched Emily as she moved up and down the hallway, her focus locked on her work. He saw the way she straightened magazines on side tables, gently smiled at an elderly guest struggling with bags, and checked that every detail in the lounge was just right. Even if people barely noticed her, she moved as if each small act mattered. Something about her reminded him of his mother. She used to work long days, hardly ever getting any thanks, yet she kept going with a calm strength, just the way Emily did now. Michael left the hotel with new thoughts swirling in his head. He was more convinced than ever that he needed to do something, not out of pity, but because he saw something rare in Emily. Meanwhile, she had no idea she was being watched, or that her usual routine was about to take a surprising turn, set in motion by someone she had never met. The next morning, as Emily arrived for her shift before sunrise, the routine felt no different from any other day. She pushed open her locker, expecting the usual plain space, but this time something caught her eye. Sitting neatly inside was a brand new pair of work gloves, just her size, alongside a warm breakfast sandwich tucked into a brown bag. On top was a folded piece of paper. She opened it with shaky hands and read the simple message, "Your hard work and dignity do not go unnoticed. Keep going." There was no name, just the kind words. Emily looked around the empty locker room, searching for a clue about who could have left the surprise, but her co-workers went about their business as if nothing was different. She slipped on the gloves and bit into the sandwich, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in months, a real smile, one she did not have to fake, softened her face. That small act told her she mattered, at least to someone. Elsewhere, in the building, tucked away in a maintenance office, Michael watched the security camera feed. Seeing Emily's reaction, he felt certain he was on the right track. He believed that sometimes change started with one small kindness and a little faith. Elsewhere in the city, Valerie was soaking up the spotlight at a popular daytime talk show. The studio lights made her new purse sparkle as she sat across from the host. Compliments poured in about her style and confidence, and Valerie beamed, soaking up every word. She spoke about her upcoming projects, smiled for selfies, and let everyone know how much she valued her fans. But once the cameras switched off and the crew began to wrap things up, her whole mood changed. Valerie snapped at a junior stylist for wrinkling her jacket and rolled her eyes when the sound technician asked her to wait a minute for a microphone adjustment. She demanded everything be perfect, throwing out threats about replacements if mistakes happened again. Her world spun. On reputation and absolute control, every detail polished for the public, even if it meant stepping on others behind closed doors. While Valerie played to her audience, Michael quietly picked up his phone in his office. He called the regional manager of the downtown hotel, speaking in a calm but firm tone, asking for a discreet promotion for Emily. The manager was surprised and tried to ask questions, but the message was clear. Emily deserved a real opportunity, even if no one else understood the reason just yet. By the end of her long shift, Emily felt drained and ready to slip out the back door as usual. But her supervisor, Mr. Carter, waved her over. He spoke quietly, letting her know she'd been selected for a new role. She was being transferred to the VIP lounge team on the 20th floor. Along with the new position came a bigger paycheck and better hours, things Emily had never dared dream about. She blinked, not sure she had heard him right. Her mind raced through reasons someone like her would get such an opportunity, but Mr. Carter only offered a small smile, saying she deserved it. Unsure where the support had come from, she nodded and thanked him, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and confusion. As word spread among the staff, some of her co-workers exchanged glances and hushed comments in the break room. Rumors started, up with people whispering that maybe Emily had some kind of hidden connection or was being protected by someone important. She could sense their stares as she shuffled past, head down but heart pounding. Later, she found her friend Rachel in the laundry room and quietly shared the news. Rachel hugged her so tight it almost hurt. For the first time in a long while, Emily let herself believe that maybe things were changing for the better. Over the days that followed, Michael started stopping by the hotel more often, keeping a low profile so nobody would suspect his interest. He found quiet corners in the VIP lounge or sat at a distance in the cafe just to watch Emily work. She moved with a kind of patience he rarely saw, making sure every guest had what they needed, never rushing, never skipping the small things. Even if some of the guests barely glanced her way or barked out orders, Emily's steady respect never faded. Michael made mental notes, quietly proud of how she carried herself even when the job felt thankless. With every visit, his faith grew that giving her a shot had been the right call. Somewhere across town, Valerie's usual calm began to crack. She arrived home to find a thick envelope tucked under her doormat. When she opened it, a single photo slid out. It was from an ugly scene weeks back, showing her splattered with mud during a tug-of-war at a charity event. Alongside it was a typed note. "Your secrets are not as hidden as you think." Her stomach dropped. For the first time, a chill of fear crept into her chest, loosening her sense of control. The guilt she had always pushed aside now started to seep in, unsettling her more than she wanted to admit. One chilly morning, as Emily hung up her coat and got ready for her shift, she noticed a slip of paper in her locker again. This time, there was no gift, just a handwritten note that read, "You make a difference. Even if not everyone sees it, keep moving forward." She paused for a second, looking around to see if anyone was watching, but the room remained quietly busy with staff coming and going. Emily tucked the note into her pocket, feeling a small lift in her chest. Whoever was leaving these notes seemed to truly understand what it felt like to work hard and not get credit. She kept turning over the faces of everyone she met at work, trying to guess who might be behind these gestures, but no clear answer came to her. Word about Emily's promotion and dedication slowly circled through the staff. A few colleagues began to speak well of her, telling new hires to watch how she did things in the VIP lounge, but she was aware that others kept their distance, casting sideways glances or whispering in corners when she walked by. Instead of letting the negativity distract her, Emily poured herself even more into her job, determined to prove she belonged here on her own merit, no matter who was or was not rooting for her. In the VIP lounge, Emily found herself surrounded by polished wood, soft music, and people who barely looked up from their phones or laptops. She did her best to blend in and just do her work, but her efforts kept catching people's attention anyway. From arranging fresh flowers in the morning to remembering a guest's favorite tea, Emily's attention to detail and calm way with everyone made her impossible to overlook, even though she never tried to stand out. One afternoon, a man in a navy baseball cap and plain jacket sat in the corner, pretending to read. Every so often, he glanced up just as Emily walked by. It was Michael in another one of his disguises, wanting to see for himself how she was doing. After a while, he called her over, asking for directions to the conference room. Emily smiled and gave clear, simple instructions, checking to make sure he understood. Michael caught the honest way she listened and the way she skipped formalities, treating him like any other guest. During their short conversation, she never bragged or hinted at wanting more than a steady job. As Michael left, he felt certain he had been right about her all along. She really was someone who deserved even better. Across the sprawling city, Valerie sat down with her father James in his cozy living room. She rarely opened up to anyone, but after the anonymous threat and the growing whispers around town, she felt like the walls were starting to close in. Valerie told James about the rumors and all the pressure that came with her public life. She half expected him to comfort her, but James didn't let her off easy. He listened quietly, then said, "Sometimes, Valerie, we face consequences for how we treat others. Maybe it's time to look at what you have given out into the world." His words hit harder than any headline or harsh message ever had. For once, Valerie sat in silence, truly considering whether her need for control and perfection had hurt more people than she realized. Back at the hotel, Emily finished up another long shift. Walking toward the staff room, she noticed a small, simple bouquet on the bench just by her locker. There was no note or name attached, just a handful of wildflowers wrapped in brown paper. Emily stopped and smiled shyly at the flowers. Even though she hadn't a clue who left them, she felt a deep sense of comfort, sensing that someone out there really did see her for who she was inside. Emily's recent success started to stir up old rivalries on the hotel staff. Martha, who had worked at the place longer than just about anyone, took her promotion as a personal slight. Martha started spreading little rumors. Nothing obvious, just small comments that drifted through the lounge and service halls. Soon, everyone seemed to be watching Emily just a bit closer, and every time she entered a room, the hush that followed made her feel lonelier. She tried to ignore the tension, focusing on her list of chores and keeping that same steady pace. Still, the old feeling of being an outsider crept back in, and she noticed it was harder and harder to find someone to share a real conversation with. One morning, Martha made her move. She swapped Emily's usual cleaning spray with something slick. Later that afternoon, right in front of the reception desk, a guest slipped on the polished floor. There was panic, papers scattered, and a chorus of shocked voices. Management called Emily to the office right away. She tried to explain, insisting she'd never be careless, but her words bounced off stony faces. No one seemed interested in hearing her out. The exception was Michael. He stood quietly in the doorway, eyes sharp and thoughtful. He believed Emily, even if no one else did, and she clung to that small spark of support. Michael, unwilling to let the situation slide, firmly asked the manager to pull up the security camera footage from the hallway outside the lounge. The staff crowded around a small monitor as the video played. There was Martha, clearly swapping Emily's cleaning supplies when she thought no one was watching. The truth was right there, black and white. All the manager's earlier sternness faded as he turned to Emily and apologized in front of everyone. Emily breathed out slowly, her shoulders dropping in relief. Still, the sting from being doubted lingered. She realized that even when you did nothing wrong, suspicion had a way of sticking around, especially in a place full of old grudges and whispered stories. She left the office grateful that Michael had backed her, but the uneasy feeling that she'd always have to fight a little harder stayed with her as she got back to work. Elsewhere, Valerie scrolled through her phone and felt sweat prickle along her neck. The photo of her coated in mud from the charity tug-of-war had finally gone viral. Comments poured in, many mocking her, and her once polished reputation on social media started to crumble. Without thinking much, she silently blamed Emily for her embarrassment, not noticing that the real changes were happening deep within herself as doubt and regret started to take root. Emily's experience with the sabotage and the truth coming out changed the mood among the staff. People who once only nodded politely now went out of their way to greet her or ask for her input. She noticed that even small talk in the break room became a little easier. The old wariness seemed to fade. As respect grew in its place, Martha was given a suspension and kept her distance after she returned, barely speaking a word. Emily chose not to hold on to the bitterness, reminding herself that grudges just made days heavier. She stayed focused on her work, feeling more solid about her place at the hotel. The respect she'd earned, even through unfair obstacles, felt like her own quiet victory. A few evenings later, Michael showed up without his usual disguise. He approached Emily at the front desk with a calm confidence and introduced himself as the owner of Liberty Hospitality, the group behind the historic Metropolitan Hotel. Emily was stunned for a moment, but as he explained how he had watched her handle herself through every trial, she understood why he seemed so interested. Michael told her he admired her resilience and commitment. He made it clear that while many had overlooked her, he had never failed to see her true strengths. Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing as Michael finished explaining who he really was. For a few seconds, she just stood there unsure if she should feel honored or nervous. Never in her life had someone with so much influence paid attention to her work, let alone stopped to recognize it in person. Reading her uneasy look, Michael quickly reassured her that he had no expectations or hidden motives. All he wanted was for her to see that she was truly valued, that someone had been paying close attention to how hard she fought through every obstacle. His words lit a new feeling in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, it was possible for things to change. Maybe the future could be brighter than she allowed herself to dream. The next morning at the hotel, Valerie approached Emily with a careful, almost forced smile. Looking Emily up and down, Valerie spoke in a steady tone that hinted at something sharp beneath. She said all this recognition might be temporary, claiming that important people like Michael often lost interest quickly. Emily's reply was steady and clear. She said she was not after handouts or sympathy, just respect from the people around her. For the first time, her confidence felt unshakable. Later that afternoon, during one of the quieter moments between shifts, Michael found Emily sitting in the staff lounge, sipping her tea and reading a worn paperback. He sat down beside her and slid a white envelope across the table. With a gentle smile, he told her to open it. Inside, Emily found a formal letter offering her a full scholarship to a well-known hospitality management program. The offer included the option for her to keep working part-time at the hotel while studying. Emily's hands shook a bit as she read the letter. Tears stung her eyes, and she looked up at Michael, barely able to get her question out. Why had he chosen her for something so important? Michael replied simply that it was because she had never asked for favors, even when it got hard. She just kept going and gave her best, which made her deserving of every opportunity. Across the lobby, Valerie watched the exchange in silence. She felt a strange heaviness settle inside her, realizing that her attempts to undermine Emily had only highlighted the difference between hurting others and building them up. For the first time, Valerie wondered if maybe it was not the mud she threw, but the kindness she lacked that had started changing everything, for both of them. It did not take long for the word about Emily's scholarship to make the rounds. By the next morning, almost everyone at the Metropolitan Hotel had heard. The team held a meeting in the banquet room, and for once it felt more like a celebration than a briefing. Even those who used to whisper about Emily or roll their eyes when she walked by now stood to clap for her. The applause filled the room, and, for a moment, Emily stood stunned by the warmth. When her turn came to speak, there was a quiver in her voice, but she spoke honestly. She thanked everyone, not just for the applause, but for every challenge, because they had shaped her. She said she had only made it through by refusing to give up, even on days she felt invisible. While Emily was being recognized, Valerie faced a very different reality. News of her social media disaster and recent behavior reached her father, the owner of a major downtown law firm. He sat her down and told her things would be different. She was pulled from her role in the family business, her credit cards suspended. Now, for the first time, Valerie had to get by on her own. Without the shield of money or a familiar title, she looked in the mirror and wondered what kind of person she really wanted to be. A few weeks after the celebration at the hotel, Michael asked Emily if she would join him for dinner, not at a fancy restaurant, but at a small neighborhood place a few blocks from the hotel. They settled into a quiet corner, away from the chatter about business and success. Over plates of roasted chicken and fresh bread, they let their guard down, trading stories about their families, their favorite teachers, and even some childhood mishaps. Michael was open about how meeting Emily had changed his perspective. He said her ability to stay kind and steady, even under pressure, made him rethink what real strength looked like. For Emily, hearing this was almost unbelievable. But over dessert, she realized she was beginning to accept that she truly deserved happiness and the opportunities before her. Later that month, when the Metropolitan Hotel celebrated its 100th anniversary, Emily was the guest of honor. She wore a simple sky-blue dress and stood in front of a crowded banquet hall, feeling more sure of herself than ever before. After the ceremony, she slipped off her shoes and, with Michael by her side, walked across the street where she had once felt invisible and unimportant. Only this time she crossed with her head high. Standing there together, Emily and Michael showed everyone watching that when life throws mud your way, it is possible not only to endure, but to rise, and maybe even inspire others along the way.